Okay, so I can begin. First of all, I want to welcome everyone today. It's my first go around in Somersworth with your budget process. I'm looking forward to it. It's nice to see folks at a budget workshop. It's rare to see this, which is great. I want to thank the staff members that are here today, and I want to recognize them. Devin is here from Maplewood Elementary School, and we have Cody, who oversees the before and after school program. Mr. Chris Tebow, who's our high school principal. Mr. Lampron, James Lampron, is our middle school principal, and we have Miss Sue Blair, who does a lot. She oversees grants. She's worked with me on curriculum, and just a great person to work with. And we have Jay, who's wearing a mask. I hope you're feeling a little bit better, Jay, today. Not trying to pick on you because you're wearing a mask, because I do a lot too. And he's our facilities and grounds manager, or I'm sorry, director. And we have Katie Kraus over here, who's our business administrator. And so thank you all for coming. Oops, and I forgot, we have Leah and Sal, husband and wife, who work at Maplewood Elementary School.
Co-president.
And I'm sorry, Idlehurst. I need another sip, hold on.
Yeah. Don't we all?
And they also are part of the supports and clerical staff union, and Lee is the president of the union. So there's a lot of people that are invested in this budget. It does take a team. It's not one person's budget. It's not my budget. And I've tried to work with a number of people to bring forth a budget that I feel and others feel will provide an adequate education for all of our students in Somersworth. And so I want to thank Katie for her work behind the scenes in the central office, and the principals who are here today, and those that are not here today that have worked with their faculty and staffs to bring forth some recommendations to the administrative team. The administrative team started this process about a month and a half ago. We've had some pretty interesting discussions, and so looking forward to talking with you about this. So, budgets are more than simply numbers. From my perspective as a superintendent, my job is to bring forth to you and advocate and recommend a budget that we feel is going to meet the needs of our students in Somersworth. It's not just about numbers, object codes, and function codes. It's about people. And budgets are about people with regard to students and staff. And that's my focus as a superintendent, really, is our students first, and secondly, our staff. Kids always come first. And that's really what, for me, the budget is all about. It's also about programs. It's about how we provide programs to students, be it a history program, a language arts program, anything to do with the delivery of programs to students. It's also about student services. It's about special education. It's about counseling. It's a number of things that we must address in terms of students' services. And it's also, again, about providing what we feel as administrative team is an adequate public education in Somersworth. So I also think that a budget should tell a story. It reflects the past and what the future will bring us moving forward in Somersworth. I'm going to start the story from a 60,000-foot level. I'll call it the hilltop city. So I'm going to give you an overview from the hilltop. And then Katie is going to talk a little bit about what the budget looks at ground level. So I did give you a handout that you can follow along with regard to the story. And so I will begin the story. And my guess is the story will take, pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Sorry, Katie, I missed you.
I can take it for now. Take mine.
Yeah.
No worries. I'll follow along.
So here's the recommended budget based on my conversations with a variety of different people. So here's what we propose to spend. And we're looking at it from this is an expenditure budget That does not include revenue at this time. I will talk about revenue a little bit later. The numbers that I have came from your notebook, and I derived them from what Katie presented. And so the current approved budget, the budget that we have right now, is $31,062,416. The recommended budget is $32,774,000 and 177. Let me try again. It's $32,774,144. That is an increase of $1,711,728, which is a percentage increase of 5.5%. In my role as superintendent over the years, I brought forth budgets to a variety of different school boards that tend to range between 3 to about 6%. That's typically what I've seen, and that's what I've done in the past. This expenditure budget includes input from faculty, staff, administrators during the budget preparation process. It's focused and based on real student learning needs, social, emotional, and physical needs throughout the district. So it's really based on student needs. It's not a budget based on wants. It's really based on what I'm hearing from the folks that work in your buildings that you hire to run your schools. It's based on need. It does continue to provide a level of services for our families who are accustomed to those services and expect those services. That's what our families are accustomed to and what they expect. And it maintains a level of essential programs and services for all students. This is a budget that I must recommend to you as your school systems leader. My job is to propose what I believe is best for students and public education in Somersworth. It's also based on, again, the feedback that I get from the folks that work in the buildings on a daily level. Here's what we're limited to spend, and this does not include revenue. So I'm comparing apples to apples when it comes to expenditures. The Somersworth fiscal year 25 tax cap budget. I am not recommending that. In my seat, I need to recommend what I believe we need, okay? So I'm not recommending it. I realize I have to live with that game plan moving forward. Again, the current approved budget is $31,062,416. The total dollar increase for the tax cap is $836,047, which equates to a 2.69% increase, okay? And so the budget increase is limited to the city charter. That's the game plan I need to follow. The school board is restricted in presenting a budget to the city council above the tax cap threshold. The budget must be approved by the city council. The budget is focused and based on the need to limit the city's tax rate increase. That's a fact. The city charter allows the city council to override the tax cap budget by a 2/3 majority vote, and the city council can approve an amount below the tax cap budget. This budget cycle, the tax cap is based solely on the National Consumer Price Index, CPI, for urban areas, as published by the United States Department of Labor. It is, currently, the CPI is 4.1%. Let's look at the impact on the budget when revenue is considered. Okay, so now we're combining revenue and expenditures, and we get to what's known as a net budget. So in Somersworth, it's projected the district will lose $341,128 in state revenue. That's what we're losing. That's what we're projecting to lose. It is projected the district will lose $47,588 in local revenue for fiscal year 25 as well. So when you combine those two, the projected total loss in revenue is $388,716 from the current fiscal year to fiscal year 25. Are you all following me on that? Mm-hmm. So we're losing revenue, and we also are limited by the cap. So when you deduct this lost revenue amount to the tax cap budget limit, so I'm taking the $836,047, subtracting the loss in revenue, $388,716, the net maximum total budget increase under the tax cap is $447,331 for fiscal year '25. This results in an actual budget, a net budget, when you combine the projected spending and projected revenue, increase of 2.22%. That's the real increase to your budget when you look at revenue and expenditures. So if you take that $447,331 divided by last year's net budget, that's what you get for a percentage of increase. And again, that's based on the National Consumer Price Index. This amount does not fully cover the salary increases for school personnel, as well as the district's contractual obligations, fixed cost, and operational costs, such as electricity, heat, water, etc. So coming out of the gate, if we're in a track meet, we're starting probably 25 yards behind the starting line. That makes sense to you. So what does this mean for the recommended fiscal year '25 budget? The budget that I talked about needs to be cut by $1,264,396. That's what we need to cut, based on the budget that, we want to bring forward and I'm recommending to you. So there will be an adverse effects on students. I'm being honest with you. I've talked to the administrators about this. I've talked to teachers. I've talked to others. It means that there'll be major consequences of such cuts. There'll be an adverse effect on students, and there'll be an adverse effect on school operations, building operations. So, for example, it's going to impact people. We're going to have to look at personnel cuts. That impacts people. We're going to have to cut essential programs and service. That impacts students. We're going to look at potentially having higher class sizes for all grades. We're going to have to look at fewer electives for some of the high school students. We're considering anticipated increases of referrals for special education and 504 services. If we don't have the supports in place, that could increase our referrals. Also, we'll have increased attendance and behavioral problems because there's less staff to manage students. And there's less staff to monitor what kids are doing when they're not at school. And there'll be a decrease in student coverage and management abilities at the building levels. Our principals will have less coverage to make sure kids are served. And what that translates is there's a concern on the part of our administration that there will be increases in student safety concerns. If you don't have the bodies to cover the people, and if people are out sick, we know that we'll have absences. We know that it's difficult to find substitutes. Then we're going to have coverage issues. And we believe that it's less than an adequate public education for our children and young adults. So with that, I'm going to stop. I don't know if you have any questions. I can turn it over to Katie. She can get in, I gave you the forest. She can give you the trees. She'll talk about the pine trees, the birch trees, the maple trees, the elm trees. But that's the overview, the total picture that I can paint for you in the story that I'm telling to you today. And I'm sure I'll have to discuss this as we go on. But that's the reality that we face in Somersworth right now. So with that, if you want me to turn it over to Katie, I can. She can walk you on through, and then we can ask questions. You can ask questions if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some questions. You all we'll go down the since it's your birthday.
Oh, you didn't sing.
Yeah, happy birthday. I get to think about numbers. Yeah, thank you, Lou. This is really, really helpful. I appreciate that you came at it from like an educator point of view. Just so, this is always, I'm not a numbers person, so for me to wrap my head around this is really tough. So let me just sort of understand. Basically what you're saying is in order to get to the budget that you recommend, but for it to be sort of okay because of the tax cap, we have to cut that million plus.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's, I just needed to
That's not,
get that in my,
yeah,
straight in my head.
the second budget that I talked about,
Yep.
I would not bring forward. And my school administration and faculty and staff would not recommend that to you.
Right, but that is the budget that per the tax cap is
Correct.
basically the one that's sort of allowed.
Correct.
Per, per the, okay, perfect, thank you, okay.
Happy birthday, Susan. So my ask, first of all, Lou, thank you so much. That was super helpful to kind of do an overview. I'm wondering, and this may not be appropriate, since we all had the binder and the information emailed to us, I want more information about specific, like page 7. And are we gonna have to go through like every page to get there? You know what I'm saying? Like, can we?
I'm gonna have Katie.
Yeah, I think
thing.
we're gonna like see it all from like for the first, at least this first time, let's like hear it all bigger picture and then like highlight, get your questions ready. But for this right now, if something doesn't make sense in the very moment, definitely by all means have a question, but like the nitty gritty and expanded later.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Marcia. Yep. And then Todd and Carrie.
Do we need to be mic? Yeah.
You do. Yeah. Mike's on.
Okay. I'll start with the easy question. There was another handout
Yep.
that was given to us, and I'm sorry, I think it just explains the budget overriding, but I
does,
just want
yes.
to make sure of that. And then my second question is, I thought I understood when you were going through this the second handout with the fiscal year 25 budget recommended. I understand that's what you would recommend. Then there was the tax cap budget, and I thought the net was what we, in order to achieve your budget, or is it to achieve the tax cap budget?
It may make more sense if I
Questions?
go through maybe the summary of the budget and then more detail, and then maybe it'll
Then we
connect
can-
it
then
all
we can get
together.
to that.
Just a
Right.
suggestion.
Those were my only questions.
Okay, great. Carrie, then Todd.
Just really, really quick. I don't love where we're going with restart. I'm scared for our children for the proposed budget. Let's be clear on that. I like this whole layout. Thank you for that, all that hard work. I'm excited to see what Katie brings forward, and I'm excited to see what we can fight for because I think we're ready for that.
First of all, Susan, welcome to your surprise birthday party. And it's nice to look at other numbers other than just your own, I suspect, on this day. Right? So first I want to thank the superintendent for and Katie for the all the information, the binder, and I agree that although I am not necessarily a numbers person either, I appreciate the thought that the numbers tell a story, right? There are people behind numbers. There are children behind numbers, and they tell a story. So I think it's also good to have a reminder that this is not our last meeting. This is not our last discussion. I think, we really just received this information. I think it's important to ask the questions and have the discussion, absorb community input, and decisions will be made at later times. But this is an important session to receive that initial information. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I think I'll turn it over to you. Again, board, if something doesn't make sense in the moment.
Yeah,
if it
stop
just
me as I go,
Yep,
yep.
but otherwise, kind of big picture coming from Katie. Thank you so much.
And I'm sticking right in the first tab of the budget overview. That's where I am.
All
Everything
right.
else is backup material to this section, so
Katie,
I'm certainly not going through this entire binder, so, yes.
Katie, would it be helpful to just go through the sections?
Sure.
That
Well,
would
yep.
help, I think.
So the
how
fir-
it's all laid out.
Yep.
Okay.
So your first tab is the budget overview, as I said, so this is just going to give you the summary of the budget. It also includes the detail line-by-line budget in the back. Your next tab is your revenue tab, so there's a summary of all our revenue that we receive. Plus, I've given you some backup detail on our State of New Hampshire adequacy aid, which was presented to the Budget Committee back in the fall, and it gives you the breakout of the different areas where we're seeing an increase or a decrease. There's also the building aid revenue sheet that shows the amount. This is for the Idlehurst Elementary School, so we receive money for that, but it decreases each year. Building aid's a little bit different now. They give you the money up front. When Idlehurst was built, they give it to you over like a 20-year period. So the next tab is the tax cap. So you'll see the estimate from the city manager with a memo as well as the estimate. And then I also gave you a tax cap history from 2015 down to current year to show you the increases over the years and then the amounts that we had to decrease or in order to meet the tax cap. The next tab is technology. It's a draft budget of our technology budget. Special education tab, there's a report from Amy Pillsbury and Lorraine Field with different numbers of students that we have currently in the district, out-of-district placements, and kind of a snapshot of where the special ed budget is. And then a detailed special ed proposed budget. Transportation, I've included the contracts with First Student and the amounts we pay to them for regular ed and special ed transportation. Benefits, there's sheets in there for all of the health, dental, Primex, workers' comp, and property and liability for you. The debt schedule is next. That shows all of our outstanding bonds, principal, and interest. The enrollment tab has a projection for class sizes in each of the grade levels, and as well as our current enrollment. The grant budget is an overview from Sue Blair on the different federal grants that we receive. And then there's the SAU budget, which was approved back in the fall. And then from there, you have individual budgets for each of the schools broken out by school. So now I'm going to focus on the budget overview tab. Yep. So as Lou mentioned, our estimated revenue is $10,381,308. This is a decrease in revenue of $388,716. We had a reduction in our state adequacy aid of $318,345. This was primarily due to a decrease in the extraordinary needs grant. Did you have a question, Maggie?
You know, and I said to hold questions, but when I look at last year's adequacy of, you know, with the adjustment that we received later of 9.1 and then the adequacy grant and SWEP grant, I've been following this to see if we're going to receive more because it's so significant to our budget and then it's so late in the game when we receive it. It looks like SWEP, we don't know yet, maybe kind of level set in New Hampshire, but this is a major, you know, the estimate was the same last year. They very much underestimated adequacy. Is there anything else that you can clarify?
It's based on information as of right now, so it's based on your enrollment, projected enrollment, free and reduced lunch counts. The majority of it is you do have an increase in your total adequacy, which is based on your enrollment and everything like that. The part that is a decrease is the extraordinary needs grant, which is based on equalized property value over your free and reduced lunch students. That's where the decrease is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I know. We base the budget on what we know at this moment in time, at Saturday, February 3rd, day after Groundhog's Day, what we know as of today. And Katie, unfortunately, doesn't have the crystal ball to project what it may be. If she did, she wouldn't be here. She'd be in Vegas, and she'd be a millionaire. But she doesn't have that. She doesn't have that crystal ball. So we go with what we know at this particular moment in time. Sorry.
And I'm given this by the state, and I have to budget that amount. That's the amount I'm given. You can go down from that amount because they guarantee you 95% of the estimate. That's the amount you are guaranteed to receive. We've done that in the past. However, because we tend to get way more in the fall, it hits us on both ends because we have to decrease our budget to cover that loss, and then we end up getting it in the fall. So the board in the last few years has decided just to go with 100% of the estimate because we know more than likely we're going to get more money in the fall.
Yep, Susan, and
So-
then Marcia.
Question about the adequacy. Is this a statewide sort of phenomenon across districts that you basically have to come up with this budget before the adequacy comes out, or is this unique to us and just our timing? I guess
No,
I'm
this is
questioning
the state.
timing.
This is the state law. So they give us an estimate to build our budget, and then they do a revised estimate after the end of the year reporting is done. So each year at the end of the year, we have to report to the state our average daily attendance for our students, our free and reduced lunch counts, and then they revise the estimate based on the end of year numbers.
Okay, so in other words, if all the districts were to wait until the final, it'd be too late.
Yeah, we
okay,
can't- yeah.
Okay, so no, so this is
This is the process of how it works statewide.
statewide. So all school districts are sitting around going, okay, well, we
And it
think.
And then it changes in
Okay.
September 15th, we get the revised estimate from the state.
Okay.
And we went back for the supplemental,
Yep.
Dover did, Rochester, everybody did,
Okay.
because
I
they all
just-
received the additional.
I just wanted to make sure this isn't like something where, hey, somewhere along the line, somebody made this choice to have us start the budget then, and now we're screwed ourselves. So,
So it's just something to keep in mind with tiers and with needs, is that if money comes at a time, it's really for that forecasted blindness, right? So,
Yeah.
and
And that's the kink in the story, folks. You don't know what the state's going to give you, and it's hard as a school system to, be proactive in the delivery of essential programs and services. We're always behind the 8 ball. So let's say you lay somebody off. Do you use that money to bring that person back and then lay them off again? Do you not have an after-school bus and then wait to see if you get the money, which is a need, and then put the afternoon school bus in like we did this year? So that's the kink in the story. That's the problem.
thank you.
The next one is the building aid, again, a decrease of 17,383, as I already mentioned about the Idlehurst building project. Our indirect cost revenue, we adjusted during the SAU budget, down by 5,400. This is money we receive from our federal grants to administer the grants. At the end of the year, when I do my DOE 25, they give us an indirect cost rate, and that's the percentage of each grant that we can take as revenue for our administrative costs for running those grants. The reduction in use of fund balance of $100,000. This is a resolution that was done a few years ago. We could use money from our current budget, so the FY24 budget that we're currently in. If we knew we were going to have a lot of money left over, we could use that as revenue into our next fiscal year. So last year we used $100,000. It's something we can consider. This year it's been a really, really tight budget, so I'm not sure we're going to have the funds at the end of the year in order to use it as revenue. A few years ago, we used about $419,000 to cover our budget for the following year. So it's something that is at our disposal to use. You just have to use it wisely, because if you don't have it going into the next year, you're going to see this reduction in your revenue. So we had a couple of increases in our revenue. The SAU fee for services for Rollinsford, that was based on the approved SAU budget, so there's an increase of $34,413. We increased our building use fees by $500 for the rent that we charge for Head Start to have the classroom at Idlehurst. And then we had an increase of $17,499 in other state aid, which is from the Freedom Education account from the state, where students can choose to go to other school districts and utilize those funds. We get some funds from that. So that's just a snapshot of revenue. For expenditures, the proposed budget, and this is our proposal, as Lou said, without the tax cap involved. So this is what we are proposing as our proposed budget: $32,774,144, an increase of $1,711,728. The net budget, including the revenue, is $22,392,835, which is an increase of $2,100,443, which is an estimated tax impact of $1.86. So then,
I just want to just say something about this. When you look at the history of the tax cap, okay, follow the history, and you're going to see that things have been deferred over time. And at some point, you have to catch up. So you defer maintenance, you defer not having an additional staff member to cut lawns, you defer a foreign language program, you defer, and then you get to the point where you got to catch up. The old adage, you can pay me now or pay me later, comes into mind here, because once if you continue year after year after year after year after year, not bringing in a budget that's adequate to provide the essential programs and services, it's going to look like it's going up a tremendous amount, because you never had a chance to catch up. So or balance it out over time. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point.
Can I ask really quick? Wasn't our estimated tax impact last year under $1?
I think when we originally proposed, it was 92 cents.
Okay.
Yeah, Katie, can you just go back real quick to that bullet point about the other state aid regarding the Freedom Education accounts? And so just help me to understand, because I know, so basically, you're saying this is money, an increase in revenue. So we are getting, so the district is getting money
Yes.
for the families who then want to send their kids to outside of the district? That,
Yes. Let me just pull it up. Hold on. So we get 50% of the loss in adequacy this year and 25% of the previous year. So the loss of the adequacy for those students that we would have normally received.
okay.
If they came to our district, they would have been counted in our enrollments. So we would have received adequacy funds for those students.
So how is this an increase then? I guess that's where I'm getting.
Because we're getting more than we had last year.
So we're getting more, okay, sorry,
More revenue.
right. I'm, something in my mind, in my brain is not.
Coming in or students going
so-
out, do you mean?
We have more students this, go ahead, Lou.
It's a shell game.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, and the state established a shell game.
right.
So you're getting less revenue because kids are going out, but they're giving you a small amount.
small amount,
If the
percentage.
kids were here, you would have gotten more. And so what Katie's contrasting is we're getting a little bit more than last year, which means more kids are going out because you're getting a little bit more in that small amount. That 17,000 is a pittance compared to the adequacy aid you would get if those students stayed here. And so the state has, created a mechanism for people to go elsewhere, and where they're going is getting the money we typically would get, and we get it, and it makes it look good that we're getting a little bit of revenue for those kids.
It's for 9 students.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So it's kind of a shell game.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I just want to make this clear. So we are almost doubling our proposed budget, and we are still having to make all those cuts.
We have to make all the cuts to get to the tax cap of $860,000. Only use $860,000.
But so last year we did 92 cents. This year, right here, the net budget is $1.86. Is that
One
our
point-
proposed budget?
That's our proposed 1.6 million, but 1.7.
So that's what I'm saying. Our
The
we have
92 cents though
doubled
became,
our
the 92
proposed-
cents last year was below the tax cap though.
Right.
So- Yeah.
Right. So like
Yeah.
it's kind of it's a little bit misleading, I think, in my mind of like, oh my gosh, we're doubling our tax cap impact, right? But we are decreasing the budget.
no.
But the decrease is to meet the tax cap. So this is
To meet the
this is
186?
before the tax cap. So if we didn't have a tax cap, and this would be our proposal, it would have an impact on the tax rate of $1.86.
Yeah.
The tax cap impact is 74 cents.
Yes.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
so from my seat as your educational leader, if the focus is the tax cap, that's not really my focus. My focus is what do kids need? That's my focus. That's what you pay me to do, to make a recommendation. And I'm used to making recommendations. You can certainly shoot me down, and I'll have to come back to you.
That's okay.
But,
No,
but that's my recommendation. And if you look at the history, again, your past, it appears that you've under budgeted over the years. And it appears last year you didn't budget to the tax cap. That's under budgeting based on what we see as the needs. And that's what your administrators are telling you. That's based on the needs. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Tom.
Ryan, I think you just explained it, but there's the recommendation,
Right.
there's the professional recommendation.
Right.
And then there's the submitted proposal.
Correct.
two separate
Correct.
thoughts. So
So they would like our tax cap to be what again?
What the tax, right, yeah, so that was my next thing. Oh,
Yep.
the tax, what do you mean? The tax impact?
Yeah, let
I'm-
Katie can continue and then it'll become clear, I think.
All right, so I'm still on the bottom of page 1. So the tax cap, so the maximum increase permitted by the tax cap, again, is $836,047. So right now, with our proposed budget, not the tax cap, but compliant budget, we are $1.2 million above the tax cap.
And I just want to say one thing. If you look at the tax cap budget, okay, I'm saying that's a 2.2% increase. If you look at the recommend,
2.6?
no, it's a 2.2
2.2.
when you
Oh, wow.
discount the revenue.
Right.
So the range is 2.2 to what we're proposing, which approaches 10%, okay? I know, there's a range there. And that's what you're looking at, a 2.2, or you're looking at it close to 10. The reason why it's higher and it's closer to 10 is because we've under budgeted over the years.
I don't know if it's quite 10 though, but at 1.7.
Well, if you take the numbers, it approaches that number. It's like 9 something.
Oh, okay.
So that's your range, okay? I'm focused on the services and what the range of services could be in terms of percentage of increase to your budget, not the tax cap. So it's a different way of looking at the budget. It would be easy for this administration and for me to say to you, yep, we're coming in at the tax cap, 2.2%, sayonara, we're done, we've got a budget, let's move on. But I need to let you know the consequences of that. The consequences of that are the things that I listed earlier. So think in terms of a range, okay? I understand that in government there has to be compromise, I get that. But I'm just letting you know, here's the playing field right now, here's the range, here's the 20-yard line, here's the other 20, the opposite 20, and you got a range in between, and how far can you run the ball?
Okay, all right.
Good. All right, page 2. So these are just some general expenditure items that are evident throughout the budget, all the different functions. So we had a medical insurance increase of 4.9% for our custodians and a 4.1% for all other staff. The reason why we have 2 rates is the custodians moved to school care many years ago prior to everybody else moving to school care. We used to have Health Trust, so their rates are rated differently than everybody else. Primex, for property and liability, we had a 7% increase, and for workers' compensation, a 10% decrease. Northeast Delta dental rates, these are estimated at this point at 7%. I don't receive their rates until March, so I put in an estimate. Health Trust dental rates for a 4.7%. So the teachers are on Delta Dental Direct through Northeast Delta Dental. SACA has an option to choose either Health Trust or Delta Dental Direct, and SAU is on Health Trust, so that's why there's 2 different dental rates. The New Hampshire retirement rate, there's no change. Those rates are good for 2 years. So next year, when we are budgeting for 25, 26, those rates will change. The budget includes a teacher increase of 4.5%. This was based on their negotiated agreement, and the custodians at 3.5%. It also includes salary and benefit adjustments for our building administrators. And it includes an estimated increase for our SACA negotiated contract. We're still finalizing that negotiations, so there's the estimate is built into the budget. And then the SAU budget approved increase was $191,071. And then there's contractual increases for all of our transportation contracts based on first student. So then page 3 is a revenue summary. Some of these I've already gone over, but I'm just going to do an overview based on the different buckets of money. So the top is our total tuition. So included in that, there's no change there. So included in that is preschool tuition that we charge for families of what we call typical students. So we can't charge for students that are there for special ed and receiving special ed services. But if we have a number of slots that are open for students that aren't coded as special ed, we charge them a tuition rate to attend the program. So that's the revenue for that. Then we have our Somersworth Youth Connection, SYC tuition. That's $190,000. $50,000 of that is a contribution from the city of Somersworth for the program, and the other $140,000 is from parent fees. And then we receive CTC tuition from other districts for students that attend our CTC programs. Local sources, again, it's the SAU fee for services for Rollinsford and the building use fees, which I've already gone over. The next section is our state revenue. Again, I've already gone over these. The only two that I did not touch on because there was no change was our special education aid, which is for students that have significant needs and their costs exceed 2.5 times the state average. So these are based on students from the prior year, and we get the revenue in the following year. So this revenue will be based on students that are attending our district in the current fiscal year. Same with the Career and Tech Center tuition aid. This is money we get from the state for our CTC students for transportation and tuition. Again, it's based on current students we have now. We get the revenue next year. Federal revenue, we have Medicaid revenue. This, again, is for our special ed students. We can bill Medicaid for certain services that our students receive. And then the indirect cost revenue, which I've already touched on. And then the use of fund balance, again, I've already spoken about, decrease of 100,000. So there's your total decrease in revenue there of the three.
And Katie, that fund balance is because we're running such a tight budget this year that
Correct. You can certainly choose to, but what I will have to do is then set that money aside, and if anything comes up,
right, and it's
and we need to use that, then we don't have it as revenue for next year.
And what are we walking at right now with
Last
our,
budget update was like 269,000 you had
Okay.
available.
So, and that's a
It's very
small
tight
percentage
compared
of-
to
Okay.
yeah.
Understood, but it's one of those, yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things the board can decide to utilize if they would like, but you do take that risk if we don't have it at the end of the year, that you're short already in your revenue going into next year.
And when do we know about that?
You have to decide now and let the city manager know if we're going to utilize that option.
Okay, but we'll
It's
know.
not something we can decide like, oh, it's June 30th and we have this money left over. You can't decide at that point. You have to decide now. Good. So now we're on page 4. Now I'm going to start talking about the expenditures. So again, as we talked about, the approved budget is for this year is $31,062,416. That includes the supplemental. So when we did our budget, proposed last year, it didn't. But that does. So I'm going to go through the different expenditure changes, and I did it based on negotiated contracts and things like that, so we could separate it out. So the first one is the custodial negotiated contract. As I mentioned, they have a 3.5% salary increase as well as step increases. So each year, when you're here for another year, you move up a step on the grid. Their health rate increase and their dental rate increase. So there is a total increase for our custodial contract of $47,806. For our SACA negotiated contract, again, these are estimated based on our negotiations. So you can see the salary and step increases, the health rate increase for the rates, and the dental rate increase. So there's a total there of $372,050. Our teacher negotiated contract, again, a 4.5% salary increase with steps. There's also an increase in the contract for next year for the medical buyback. Appendix C increases, which are the stipends that are listed in the back of the teacher contract for our co-curricular stipends as well as our athletic stipends. The teacher health rate increase, the dental rate increase, track changes for our staff, so they have to notify us by January 1st if they intend to move tracks, which is, say they have a bachelor's degree now, but they are taking courses or getting credits, they can move up the track, so to like a bachelor's 15, so those increases are built in. And then retirement payouts for our staff that is retiring. At the end of the year, built into the teacher contract, there's some sick day buybacks and retirement payouts. So there's the increase there. So our total teacher negotiated contract was an increase of $797,835. On to page 5. As I mentioned, there's salary adjustments and benefit adjustments for our administrators built in. So there's salary increases. There's an addition of longevity that was included. The health rate increase, also increase to the health percentage that the district pays for their health insurance, increase to the medical buyback amount, their dental rate increase, and then we had discussed this, I believe, at the beginning of the year or maybe at the end of last year, moving the athletic director from a teaching position to an administrator position, removing the stipends that he's paid now as the athletic director. So there was an increase in order to do those fluctuations of $9,680.
Question about the contracts. So I'm assuming these contracts don't necessarily sync up with the budget. And what I mean is, like, some of these numbers are just set. Like, we can't go back and say, like, well,
Correct, yes, the first page. The teacher one was set, the custodial one is already set.
Okay.
The SACO one is in the process of being finalized.
Okay.
Those, yes, those are already negotiated.
Okay, so these numbers that you put in here, then this is basically like this. This can't be. This is what it is. We can't move this. And
The only way to change it is to reduce staff.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
The administrators are not, because they're not union, so that's different. We did include, again, in our proposed budget, some new staff positions. So currently, we have an additional preschool program that we've paid for through ESSER grant for the last few years. That grant is going away in September, so we no longer have that grant. So we need to keep the additional preschool program just due to the numbers and the number of referrals we are receiving. So we're suggesting we add these positions into the budget. So we have a teacher position and a para position that are new staff in the budget for next year. The grounds maintenance position, this was a request by the facilities director. As if I'm sure you remember, we had this in the budget prior. We removed it as a reduction going into this budget year. The request is to put that position back in. School to home coordinators and the truant officer kind of go hand in hand. So as you know, our truant officer left. We haven't filled that position this year. We're going to reduce that out of the budget for next year, but we're proposing adding 2 school to home coordinators into the budget. These positions would be similar to the truant officer, doing some of the attendance work, but being more of a positive person to work with families and really take that negative connotation away from like being truant and just working with the families, trying to get them resources that they need and help to increase those rates and get to the root of why these students aren't coming to school. So that's the intent by those on those positions. So the total new staff is, with the reduction of the truant officer, an increase of $304,000. Special education. As you know, I've been saying all this year that we've had to increase the number of paras in our buildings due to the needs of our students. So obviously those weren't budgeted for this year, so I had to add them into the budget for next year. So we had additional para staff of $200,000 that we had to add in. However, we were able to reduce in our out-of-district placements and contracted services based on students that are leaving the district, either graduation or just have left the district in general. Stratford Learning Center dues, a small increase. That's just based on a percentage that we pay to them. And then special ed transportation has gone up by $231,096. So total special education increase is $126,443. And then page 6 is just other budget changes. So these are mostly contractual. First student regular ed transportation contract for our in-district students, that's $20,452 increase. CTC transportation, which is a tri-city agreement, we split it with Dover and Rochester. We just went out to bid for that, so each year we take turns on who goes out to bid. This year it was Rochester's turn, I believe. So our increase, again, it's with first student, $7,746. The SAU budget, I've already mentioned. Primex, workers' comp, and property and liability, increase of $282. Each of the buildings, when they submitted their budget to me, that we didn't give them any parameters as to, like, you need to come in with a flat budget. They submitted to us what they felt they needed within their buildings. So there's miscellaneous supplies and other areas that they came in with for all buildings of an increase of $39,960. Facilities, Jay submitted his budget. There's increases there, $20,822. The school resource officer, this is based on the estimate from the police department, based on the staff that we currently have. We pay 75% of the cost of the school resource officer, so there's a $10,000 increase there. I went through and looked at actuals for our copier usage, and we've been paying more than we had budgeted, so I've adjusted those lines to reflect the actuals for $3,600. And then there's staff and benefit changes of $15,000 just based on staff who have come and gone in the district. The middle school and high school athletics, there's increases there of $20,100 for the middle school. Steve has taken over the middle school athletic director, so he's really trying to increase the offerings that are at the middle school. So there's obviously a budget increase there due to that. And then the high school increases of 16,000, the majority of that is due to us having to now pay for the services of an athletic trainer. We've had that free for a number of years, but now they're saying that we need to pay for that. So originally they had said a $25,000 cost for that service. Steve and I met with Mass General, because they now take it over as part of Wentworth Douglas, and they're willing to work with schools. They understand our budgetary needs, and so they've cut it in half for next year to 12.5, and then they've proposed a 4-year sliding increase each year to try to get up to the amount that they're paying for the athletic trainer.
So is that something that we have to have? This is like a legal, okay,
Yeah.
so we currently have one?
Yeah, we do, but we haven't been paying. They have given it as a free service
Oh, okay,
for a number of years, and now they're asking for
okay.
to be paid for. Retiree health insurance changes. So in the teacher contract, when they retire, teachers are able to stay on our plan until they're age 65. So these are based on the health insurance rate increases. We had an increase in technology for software of 18,000. This was due to the increase in the number of devices. We had only budgeted for 200 devices. We're actually using over 400 devices. So Back Bay has been supplementing that amount, so we had to add in the amount that we are supposed to be paying for that software. It's for antivirus. Debt service reductions. This is
I'm sorry, Katie, can you just remind me, what was the devices differential? I lost that. Was it
think it
200
was
and 400?
400
You just said it, so I
um,
just,
let me see. 100 to 400. Yeah.
okay, so 200 about
Yes.
licenses, and now we're going to 4. Okay.
We're not going to. We already have those.
But the makeup
yes,
is, okay,
yes.
thank you, that's all, I just missed that.
Debt service reductions. This is just based on the debt schedule. As I said at the beginning, each year we have bonds that increase or decrease. Copier lease savings. We had just done a new lease, I believe, last year, and so I went through it, and we were able to reduce by $32,000. We were budgeting at an older lease payment. The supplemental appropriation, these were items, those additional items that the board approved with the supplemental in the fall. We won't be doing those next year. The roof project, the school-based health, all those things that we won't be doing, those were removed out of the budget. And then each year when we have teachers retire, we always adjust their salary and benefits to a master's step 7 and a 2-person plan for new staff that's coming in to replace them. So there's a small decrease there of $4,600. So, as we mentioned at the beginning, our total proposed increase is just over 1.7 million. Based on the tax cap limitation, we're over by $1.2 million. So, page 7, we're here, Barbara.
Let's describe it first.
Okay, so that is our proposed budget, as if we did not have to meet the tax cap, based on what we need. Because we do have to meet the tax cap, of course, we had to meet and go over areas that we could reduce in the budget in order to meet the tax cap. So we met as an administrative team to go over all of the different areas where we felt we could remove, and we tiered them out based on impact. So the top section is tier 1, which are items that we can remove that will have the least amount of impact. So tech computer hardware, there's an amount budgeted for $23,000 for tech computer hardware. We're going to remove that, so there'll be no money in order to increase our technology for next year. Each of the schools, as I mentioned, increase their budget for supplies, print media, different areas. We're level funding all of the buildings for next year, so they're going to just stay status quo as to where they're budgeted for the current year. So you can see there the different amounts. Maplewood is a decrease of $5,000, CTC was $3,000, high school was $4,000, facilities the $20,000, and middle school $21,975. We removed the late bus. Again, this is something we do every year. We remove it in budget time. We add it back in. We added it back in with the supplemental. We're choosing to remove it again as a reduction. A .5 Maplewood aid for $20,000. A middle school case manager, and the grounds position.
And Katie, if I can just note, I just did the calculations here. That would bring it down to $1,243,000 from the reduction, which in my quick calculations is about the CPI increase, like 4.1%. So just to give that perspective to the board, that's about that's how much it would, that's 1.2, right, with these reductions from the 1.7 equals about a 4% in alignment.
And I just want to note too, like, these aren't set in stone.
No.
We still have the, we're still having discussions on like, well, maybe it makes more sense to move that one to tier, you know what I mean? So these were just first blush, let's tier them out.
This is an overview
This is
right
an
now.
over-
This isn't, yeah.
We
thank
have
you.
another admin meeting on Tuesday where we'll probably firm up some areas and, it won't fluctuate from what's on this list. We won't be adding a different item most likely, but it will be maybe one thing moves from tier 1 to tier, depending on the
It's
discussion.
simply purposes of to have a discussion. We're open-minded. We're not, locked in. But Katie's right. We're open-minded. We're trying to keep an open mind here. Not locked in. We'll move some things around if we have to, based on your direction.
I mean, at the time we present to council, we will be locked in because,
Right.
And that will be,
I have to submit the budget to the city manager by March 1st.
and then sometime in March.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So this, you probably just explained all that when you said that these are not locked in, but I see that we had asked for a grounds maintenance position, and now we're taking it out. We're asked for it, but now we're taking it out. Okay.
Again, we had to meet the tax cap, so we feel
Sure.
we need it, but in order to meet the tax cap, these are the reductions
Thank
that
you.
we've come
Okay.
up with.
Okay.
Good. So tier 2 are, again, we're removing them to meet the tax cap, but these have more of an impact to the district. We'll have to we still have to do these things, but we'll have to figure out a different way to provide them. So tier 2 reductions, the first one is the SYC program. We're moving that program completely. It's a net of 100,000. So as you know, we have about 290,000 built in for expenses. However, we're bringing in 190,000 in revenue. So if we're not having the program, I have to also decrease the revenue and decrease the expenditures. So the net is 100,000. Everybody understand?
Sorry, remind me what it's been so long now. The city pays for some of that now, right?
50,000. So that's included in the 190 in revenue.
Sorry, did you say 15 or 50?
50.
50, 50.
Zero.
Okay.
Everybody understand that? Okay. The assistant superintendent position, that was included in our SAU proposed budget. We're proposing that we remove that position. Again, that will have an impact on your revenue as well. I haven't calculated that yet because, again, we haven't finalized this list. So if this does stay as a reduction, your revenue will also change because Rollinsford's amount that they're paying will decrease because we no longer have this included in the SAU budget. Any adjustments you make to the SAU budget has an effect on your revenue. Rollinsford won't pay any more, but they will pay less if you're not having those expenses.
And Katie, correct me if I'm wrong. If we do that, then we'll have less revenue, which drives in that overall
Yes.
2.2% increase. So you're approaching, 2.1%.
The part-time foreign language position at the high school is a reduction. Again, this was another position that we had reduced out of the budget last year, but then it got added back in. And it got changed to part-time, and we're reducing that part-time position. We still have to offer it, so we're going to have to look at other ways to offer those languages through VLAX or another, avenue.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, I got in touch with the state, and Chris and I have been talking. If we eliminate that, let's just throw it out for an example. If we eliminate French, okay, we would have to put an online version of that in our program of studies. It has to be offered, okay? And if there's any cost incurred by students, which I don't think there would be under VLAX, we would have to pay for that. Okay.
Does it matter which language? You said French in particular, but
Like
we have
we'd
to
I'd have
offer-
to talk about that with Chris, but that was an example.
well, I guess my question is, so we have to, per the state, we have to offer a foreign language. Is that the idea? In order
You
to
have
meet
to offer
graduation
two.
requirements?
The state standards require two.
Two.
Yeah, you can offer it online. It has to be in your program of studies.
Yep.
The other thing you could do, you could offer multiple languages through VLAX. You could offer Spanish in person, and then you could offer Mandarin Chinese. You could offer, so it depends on what the principal and I would discuss, and others, and Celeste, who's the foreign language person, we would have to discuss that.
And I recognize very early discussions here, but just a question. If it was through VLAX, would that be during the school day, or how would that work as far as programming goes?
Chris, I'm going to ask you, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Could you answer that question, please?
Yeah, so I could just stand here if that's okay.
Yeah.
So essentially, this would bring us from 10 sections of foreign language down to 6. The impact really depends on course enrollments. Kids are going through the scheduling process right now, so it depends on what they sign up for. If they sign up for French, then we'll offer less Spanish. If they sign up for Spanish, we'll offer less French. The law says we have to offer up to Spanish 3 or a 3 of one language and 2 of another language. We won't be able to offer the same amount as we would, but for simplicity's sake, let's just say it really probably means we cut French. With VLAX, we have to offer it as a program in our program of studies. Students could take it during the school day. They could take it outside of the school day. Obviously, that VLAX also has to be supervised by an adult, and at this point, I don't really know how that would happen, in part because of some other cuts that you're going to look at in Tier 3. Hope that helps.
And let me just put it out there, about 9:30, we're still going, but about 9:30, I'm gonna call for a break. Okay.
So just a
Yeah,
very,
oh.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Quick follow-up. When you state supervised by an adult, do you mean a school professional or an adult?
Currently, like our kids take VLAX classes every
Okay.
year, and if they do it during the school day, then we have it supervised typically in our media center. So our
Okay.
school librarian would kind of supervise the kid taking VLAX.
But at home,
At home, they do it on their own. Yeah. Kids make that other.
There are some kids who can do it on their own at home. It depends on how much supervision and support they need.
Sorry to, just being in the school, so supervised by an adult, I'm assuming it would have to be a properly certified adult, no? Or just, okay, because sometimes, like, I know we can't trade off services with, like, have the para cover what needs to be a certified, but the paras can cover other things, and I'm just looking at all the special ed cuts too, and like,
Right.
Really just need someone like watching.
okay, my brain is like, compliance, special ed cuts, no, caseloads, so.
Good. So the next two on tier 2 are 2 para positions, one at Maplewood, one at Idlehurst. These are sped paras, not one-on-ones. And then to round out tier 2, a part-time custodian. Tier 3, these are budget reductions that we made that we didn't want to make, only to meet the tax cap. We can't live without these. We feel like these are the most important, reductions that if we had extra money, these would be items we would put back in. With that said, there may be some fluctuations. We're still having, maybe it's a middle school case manager comes to the top, and you know what I mean, and the 2 new positions go out, I'm just, with that said. But. So on the tier 3 reductions, we have a CTC program. We're still identifying what program that is, but it would be a program at the CTC. A high school program, a library position at the middle school or high school, so it would be reducing one of the librarian positions and having one that would share between the 2 buildings. A building aide at Maplewood. Adding back in the 2 school-to-home coordinators. Again, that's an area we still have to discuss whether or not that takes priority over another position, but we've added that based on a recommendation from special education. And then middle school classroom teacher based on enrollment. Again, in the enrollment tab, you can see where the class sizes are. So those are the 2 tier 3 reductions.
Just real quick, sorry, just high school. So Barbara's just antsy to ask her. Just for the high school programs, can you give us an idea of what?
So that would be something for us, like at this point, for like specifics, we would discuss like privately as a board. So we could do that
Oh, got
actually
it.
at 9:30 if we want to take a break and be able to have that since it's public, yeah.
Perhaps not necessarily zeroing in on what we would pick, but just can we have an example of what does that mean?
Say a math or an English, one of the core programs.
One of the,
Right, and if you go into non-public session, I'd like to have Chris stay around for that discussion.
So I just want to, just real quick, so the total reductions I know are more than we need to come up with. However, a lot of these are estimated amounts because when you're reducing staff, there's a whole process that happens. So you're taking seniority, you're taking date of hire, but you're also looking at certification. So say we reduce a math program. It may not necessarily be somebody who's currently teaching math because they may have been hired later than somebody else, but that person has a math certification as well, so they have bumping rights. So that's why it's really hard to pinpoint, like, until we know for sure that we're reducing this, then we go through that exercise and we figure out the staff that's going to be reduced because it depends on a number of factors. Plus, if we have staff leaving, maybe they just don't get, replaced.
All right. So, everything that has been presented on this page is what is proposed in order to meet the tax cap.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then and you had mentioned before that there's some flexibility in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So if we wanted to stay away from programs that touch, like any position that touches a child, anyway, then we could like mix and match, right? So like basically, is there a world in which we only do one $500,000 cut? Is there a world that
Yeah,
just
so-
that?
So there is a world that you would look at, again,
Okay.
when you look at the total story, the tax cap budget is a 2.2% increase on over the current budget. If you look at the recommended budget that we believe in, that amounts to 9.4%. So there's a range in between there. The board could settle on a 5% increase. Then we have to allow, or 4%, 4.5%, you have to allow the administration then to bring forward a recommendation.
But
to you.
is the budget that is currently proposed? It's on. Yep. Sorry. I know, I'm just much louder normally. So the budget, the 9% or whatever,
0.4.
is that still doing all these cuts?
No,
No.
Any of them?
no.
If we
so-
just had, let me put this in perspective
Yes.
because I think it needs.
Thank you.
If we just were given the amount that we're allowed under the tax cap, we would only be able to keep our teachers, right? That line item. The increase is about the same. Just to give it perspective to talk to your neighbor.
Right.
In order to keep with the teacher's contract alone, the 800,000 that we're allowed under the tax cap, that would be it.
Right.
Right?
But you also have to factor in the loss of revenue too.
Loss
So
of
it's
revenue,
really
right.
not it because
Yeah,
it's,
that's- there's more- yeah,
the
or
increase to your
maybe
expenditure side is
custodians.
really $441,000.
All right, then that would be one union, one smaller union. Like the amount is so small. So let's go over all of this and get some questions answered.
So if we only do tier 1 cuts,
Well, let me just, so we have to submit a budget to the city manager
Okay.
that meets the tax cap. So when the proposal goes to the council, it will include $1.2 million in reductions. Then at that point, that's when you have the conversations with the council about the needs. Like when we have our joint meeting on Monday, we will bring this information, and that's your opportunity to say, these are what we need back in. To see if there's an appetite to add money back to
Carrie
the
and
budget.
Sarah.
But the submittal will be a tax cap compliant budget.
Okay, Carrie, then Sarah.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. This is shocking for us. And when we looked over it yesterday, when I finally got my packet because it was Thursday, we had it done. I thought it was just tiers, like we could just take one tier. Thank you for that understanding. This is nauseating.
In order to meet the tax cap, all of the tiers would go away. All
Yeah.
of these would
And
be
these,
reduced.
You know, our children, right? So our kids, and making sure they have all they need. So
The reason we tiered them, it was suggested at the budget
bongos.
committee level to tier them. So if money were to get added back in and given to
Yeah.
us, then these would be the
I do not feel like
priorities of
we're
what we would
doing our
add back in.
kids any service picking out foreign language part-time anytime, or like a middle school teacher, any of this is cuckoo bongos to me that we're here at this position and we're going to do, it's not.
So,
Not great.
yeah, so welcome to our world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cuckoo bongos is probably a good word to use. We've had these cuckoo
Yeah,
bongo
my favorite word.
conversations a number of times with the administrative team. And, this year, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, the city's going through a reevaluation, correct? And so the only factor you can use is the CPI. In the past, you could use income from construction costs minus the demolitions. So it's kind of, we're getting hit with a double whammy. Number one, last year you under budgeted. You didn't go to the tax cap. This year we have this reevaluation going on. We're seeing a loss in revenue, and that's really what we're up against. So in order to bring in a tax cap, and again, we're not recommending that. The tax cap is not what we're recommending. We have to, unlike Dover and some of the other cities, superintendent can come forward with a budget over the tax cap to submit to council. I can't. And so this debate really, in terms of what gets added into the budget, will happen at the city council level. That's the bottom line. It's going to happen there. And we, unfortunately, based on the charter, you don't have any control over that because your budget that you bring to the board, I submit it to you, you approve it, you bring the budget to the city council, that's your budget, and then it's up to the city council to decide whether or not they want to go above it, below it, or keep it neutral.
Sarah?
Okay, so to summarize my thinking, right? We've been under budgeted. In order to meet what we need for students and staff, we need an increase. The increase that we actually need to support students and staff is above the tax cap. The increase above the tax cap would amount to $1.86 per taxpayer, per year or month?
That's based on per thousand.
Right.
Per thousand, okay.
So if you have a $100,000 house, which no one has today.
So if I pay that twice, it's a cup of coffee, right? Okay, so that is what the need we have is a cup of coffee per taxpayer, right? But because of, I mean, theoretically.
Well, no, it's more than that because, I'm sorry. It's more than that. So if you take the average, I don't know what, I'd have to look it up, the average assessed
So
value.
for a $300,000 home,
Right, right.
it would be a $547.94 increase to their tax bill.
Okay, so it is an increase,
That's just a school
the
portion.
school portion. Okay, cool. So it's a more substantial increase than,
Yes,
It's $1.86 on the tax rate.
right.
okay, awesome. That's good to know. So, but we need to submit a budget that's below the tax cap.
No.
At
No,
the
you
tax
have,
cap.
we have to
Or at
submit.
the tax cap.
I would not recommend you submit a budget below the tax cap.
Okay, well, this is why I'm clarifying.
Right.
So we need to submit a budget at the tax cap.
Correct.
Which then includes, but then we get into the shell game of we sacrifice a thing which saves us money, but it actually doesn't save us money because we then have to reduce the amount of income we have, so it's like double.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay,
what
cool.
drives your discussion for educational essential programs and services is the tax cap. That's what drives your discussion. What doesn't drive your discussion is the true needs of the kids and the children and youth in Somersworth. That's what does not drive the discussion. The discussion is driven by a number. And that's, and what I said earlier, budget is about numbers, but it doesn't tell the real story about how it impacts people.
Well, like I think
That's
of
the issue.
like if I'm looking at special, even just as a special educator, looking at the special education section of proposed cuts, right? So you cut a case manager, that increases caseload on other case managers, right? You cut paraprofessionals, how are the kids who have a justification for a paraprofessional, not even a one-on-one, but just a special ed paraprofessional, going to function with the increased behavioral needs and increased academic needs, especially coming out of COVID. So then you have a whole other system with the state with Nessus and IEPs and compliance, so then you're risking also incurring out of compliance issues for all sorts of
So-
other
No,
stuff.
I'm sorry, I just for clarification, none of the stuff that's IEP driven or like none of that is impacted. Like, right, okay, that's the thing we
Not
always.
one-on-ones.
Right.
Right,
We're,
right.
we're talking about program But
But just
it does
as
have an
far
impact.
as the teacher being able to serve their students
Yes.
and paraprofessionals, even if it's not one-on-ones, there is a significant impact to a teacher's ability to serve their students or a
Correct.
paraprofessional. Like where's the lunch break coming from for a teacher
Correct.
if all the paras are gone? So,
So
not all the paras, but you know
just
what I mean.
wanted to say one thing about, the tax cap in a post-pandemic world. It worked fine for years, but now we're in a post-pandemic world, and the reality is we're seeing a high increase in referrals to special education. We're seeing extensive social emotional needs. We're seeing things that we never saw before. And so the way the tax cap is structured does not consider those outside factors with regard to what our students' real needs are. And so, again, it's an arbitrary number applied to real people that we try to serve every single day in our school district.
We are just to kind of put it in here. The ability to everyone in the school, to Katie, to our superintendent, everyone, we are not asking for anything to my core in good faith that isn't just running this school, keeping our head above water. That's the hardest part. This is not, I know, I've seen budgets from 2018. We've looked through it all. We are asking so much from our staff. We're asking for our students to, we can't ask that anymore. And how do we get through that? Yeah, Barbara, and then just a couple minutes, and then we'll take a break.
Okay,
And then Marcia.
I wanted to state this before we go into non-public. I know that there has been a strained relationship before my time with the city council, and we, since I've been here, we have given much back to the city council. I believe it was 1.1 or 1.9 million. But so in the past, we have given so much back to the city council, and it's helped positively impact. I think now in this current climate, I just want to publicly say this, that now is the time that we have to say, help us.
Okay.
Help us get to where we need to be.
Marcia.
I'm sorry, I just have a very specific question while I've got Katie here about, you had in the additions on page 6, and this is going back to remember I asked you about the 200 and the 400, and my question is just because I've worked for state government and inventory controls. The 200 devices differential, are these devices that are in use already?
Yes.
So they have software with them?
It was antivirus software.
So this 200 device purchase is for
It's not a
new-
purchase. It's not purchasing devices. It's a $72 per device cost to add the antivirus software to the device. It's not buying devices.
Okay, just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. So this is to
It's
continue
for the software. Yeah.
and so these 200 new devices, or I guess,
They're not new. They're current existing devices that
That
we've
have not-
had. But the antivirus software wasn't budgeted for on the additional machines.
fine.
Yeah.
I get that. I
Yeah,
get
okay.
that. So this is all for making sure that these existing devices have the antivirus software.
They have them. We just haven't been paying for them. It's been supplemented through our provider.
Yeah, can I, before you go?
So this 18,000 should be in a different fiscal year, like the prior fiscal year then.
No, this is for next year.
So
So
okay,
now
this is
they're
the-
not going to pay for them. Now we are expected to pay for them.
I appreciate
Does that
the
make sense?
clarification.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I appreciate them subsidizing it up until
Up
this
until
point.
this, and then for
Now-
next year, we will be paying for it.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Lou.
Before we go and break, I just want to say one thing. The mantra has been in previous years that we can do more with less. I'm here to tell you today we cannot do more with less. We need the adequate amount of money that we can provide our students with quality, adequate services. We cannot do more with less. And our principals would say that to you. Our teachers would say that to you. Our paraeducators would say that to you. Our secretarial staff would say that to you. Our custodial staff would say that to you. The time has come to state it that we cannot do more with less. And that's my parting words before we break and go into an non-public session.
Yep. Any questions before that? Yes.
Yeah, so what is the plan then? So we're in non-public for the rest of the time
No,
then?
no,
Oh,
just for a moment, I'm gonna put a cap on
Oh, okay.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public per 91 A3 2B.
Motion to go into non-public,
91
A 91 AB,
2B. Yeah. Okay.
A2B.
Okay. Any discussion on this? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Chris, could you stay with us? Thank you. Do you need anyone else? Yeah, Katie, would you stay?
Yep.
Katie will
5
stay.
to 10 minutes.
Katie's going to stay, and Chris is going to stay, and I'll stay.
We're on. Okay, we're good. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so this is my question. Are we now the reworking the tiers, or like what is the goal for us to achieve in the next hour?
So I think the goal for this session, this workshop, is to understand, right? To look through things, to understand, to have questions answered, right? We have a joint meeting with the city council on Monday to big picture what the communication is, right? To be on the same page and be able to clearly articulate our position. I think we're getting there, thanks to all. But at this point, we're not reworking the budget per se. We can voice your opinions, but really there's so much to get through in understanding where we're at and what we need and what's happening that I feel like for the next hour, that's gonna be the focus, yeah.
So then will we apply, like, since we're meeting with them on Monday, if any of the board has specific recommendations or thoughts about reworking the tiers, would we then just send an email? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
keep Todd as budget chair on, keep me as chair on, and then Lou. But, really, we don't want to have redundancy. We want all the board to know. We want to know what the questions are. So we'll work that in some way, what it is. Yep, chair is for this question. Yep.
Thank you. I think the thought process is that that we can also meet, as we did last budget year, as a committee. They call it a committee as a whole, right? Committee as a whole is when and it's similar to what the city council does and what many do in the state, in local governments, including school boards. You meet as a committee as a whole where you don't have the authority to make binding decisions in the committee as a whole. Right. That's for another time, for a more formal meeting, so that the full board can have a productive discussion. It's not just 3 or 4 members of a committee, right? It's the full board. So this will not be clearly the last meeting, and there can be as many as board members would wish and have the time to.
But also, I think we should also be prepared. We are presenting this to a public hearing on the 13th. So that presentation and public hearing should be basically what we're planning on doing. Otherwise, you're going to have to give another opportunity for a public hearing if you're going to change it significantly from when we present it. Not that I'm saying that can't happen, but it's a very tight time frame. So just keep that in mind.
Barry, then Susan?
Yeah, just a quick question. I don't know if this is a big ask. It may be a big ask, but can we maybe ask the building administrators and the superintendent and Katie to go back through and look at the reductions? Anything else we can take, anything else we can possibly slide around instead of a C2C program or a high school program or anything else? I know it's a big, huge ask, but these are huge
Yeah.
things that
Right, so that.
I'm not comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah.
So just so you know, we've had these discussions. We can come up with a variety of different scenarios, but my guess is if you say, okay, we want the CTC program to stay in, we're looking at another educational program. So what's that education? Because the the bulk of this budget is driven by people. The bulk of the money you spend on programming on all programs is people. So we can certainly say, yeah, okay, we'll put the CTC program back up to tier whatever, but we're going to have to substitute that with some other program. And so based on what we talked about, these were the ones consensus-wise we felt this is our best foot forward. We can certainly go back and rehash this, but the reality is it's gonna come from people. Just so you know that.
We are bound to the number, so however we can get to the number, suggestions from there. I think that it'll be re-looked at certain things in the next couple of weeks, but we can't have less than that number because it's bound by the charter. Yep, Susan.
So, yeah, I know we are bound by the number. Is there, what is the city council? Is there like can they overrule? They can override the tax cap?
Yes.
They can?
Yeah.
Well, is that
With
the
a two-thirds vote.
2/3 vote. So you need, 6 votes to override it.
So is that, I mean, I'm almost interested when we meet with them on Monday to be like, what?
They can't do that until we submit it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Cart before the horse. So we have
Well-
to submit it.
The other
It doesn't
thing,
mean that you can't on Monday night lay the groundwork to say,
what I'm saying,
this
yeah.
is the impacts and this is what we would like to happen.
the other
Right.
thing the council can consider, I think, and I need to get a legal opinion on this, if you look at the charter on the other page that I shared with you, there is a provision in the charter, and again, I want to make sure it's right with council, that there's an exception to the budget increase limitation. If you look at A on the first page, it says capital expenditures in the total of any part of the principal and interest payments of any municipal bond, whether established for school or municipal purposes, may be accepted from being included in the expenditures that are subject to the prior limitation upon a 2/3 vote of the members of the city council. So the way I read that, and again, I would like to have a lawyer take a look at it, is that for this fiscal year, the council could say, don't consider your principal and interest on any bond that you have, okay?
Can you explain what that is, just for the?
So in the budget, I had Katie look at these numbers. In the budget, our debt and principal amounts to $1.8 million. Okay, so hold on, let me, and then we have what Katie calls performance leases. So for copiers and other things, that's $164,000. So you could have that discussion with the council and say, hey, would you please consider, given the fact that, we've made cuts over the years, we've turned back money over the years, we're kicking the can down the road every year, would you consider giving us a part or all of consideration to not consider, I said to consider twice, but not consider the debt and principal in the budget and allow us to move forward with these things. It's almost a similar number, if I'm making sense.
Yep, Susan.
But again, I'd like to get an attorney's opinion on that.
Well, so if that were to happen, Lou, then would we have to still cut
No.
tier one?
No, because you're not considering debt service, but you wouldn't have to cut anything, but then you have to look at how does that impact the next fiscal year, right? So that's
Okay.
another thing to
So-
There's a
consider.
balance. There's a
Right.
balance to it.
So
yeah.
you could go for a portion of it. How does it impact the next fiscal year is going to be the question. And then if they have an appetite for that, then Katie and I and some others are going to have to, mostly Katie and me, are going to have to look at how does that impact the following year.
Okay.
Okay, so we have some projections.
So-
I'm not doing that now because I don't know if the council has an appetite for
And
that.
do we as a board, will we each give our recommendation as to what we want to move forward with?
Well, I think with this, I support what Lou's saying. To explore the exemption, right? We have a low CPI. We have a double whammy that we can't work within. So that could be a resolution because it's brick and mortar, right? It's not. This is our debt service to buildings, right? And to what we have as a debt service. And there's specifically outlined in the charter. We could ask for that. So that is a possible solution. Yeah, Susan, and then Carrie? Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's great, and I'm hopeful for that, right? The thing I wanted to say, first of all, I really appreciate, Lou, that you set the tone for all of this discussion back to the kids, the students, the quality of the education, what we think is best. And I guess, the one thing I would say, and I've already sort of brought this up before, is that when if we were to approach, let's just say, for argument's sake, we approach the city council, on Monday or whatever, and we're like, hey, here's what we're thinking, in the world where we can wave a magic wand, we get to have this recommended budget. And knowing full well that the point, the city council and even us as elected, officials here, representatives, but, we are, yes, we are advocating for the students, but we also we do need to be cognizant of the tax cap, and we know the city councilors are definitely, that's why we get together with them, right? Because they have this whole, they have the appetite, right? And so when I look at this page of reductions, there's nothing there that I see that I'm like, oh, well, geez, that seems kind of frivolous. I mean, there's nothing seems frivolous to me. But I will say, devil's advocate here, I know the minute we would say, okay, you know what, everybody, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to raise the tax cap and, more taxes, then the people are going to come back and say, how can you do this? We see declining enrollment. We see low test scores, blah, 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 and they start saying the whole thing. We have to be ready to push back and say, these are the consequences of this. If we can get these sorts of, if we can keep these positions, or, we're not even saying we're not even trying to do anything that's amazing and new. Hey, we're going to build a new wing and we're going to do this and that. This is just, what they need to understand is, I guess what I'm trying to say, and very inarticulately, is that we need to be able to explain that if we want people to stop seeing reduction, students leaving, students going to private homeschool, using the EFA, and I am not somebody school choice, you go where you want to go, all right? But if we want to not have that be a solution, if we want people to not see that as a solution, and we want to see our public school as just as viable and just as great an option as anything else, then these are the kinds of things we need. We need the community to understand this and to get behind us.
Yeah, to go back to your original point about the consequences. There are many people in this room that I can bring to a meeting because I hear it from them. Okay, you and the council need to hear from them. You need to hear from Chris Tebow. You need to hear from James Lampron. You need to hear from Devin McNelly. You need to hear from Liza Coco. They're the ones that are in the trenches every day that say to me, we have these difficult conversations, the same thing we're doing tonight. Lou, here's where we're at. We can't do that, Lou. I'm like, okay, I need to let you know that. I need to let the council know that. But they're the best position to tell you what those consequences are. I can sit up here until I'm blue in the face and tell you, I bulleted off earlier all the consequences with the tax cap budget. It came from them. It didn't come from me. It came from them. And so they need to be able to speak publicly about what's happening. The other thing, and I'm going to be quiet after this because I get really passionate about budgets. The CPI is down. Okay, here's the whammy that you're facing. The CPI is down from 8% to 4.1%. Okay, that's a massive decrease in what you can allow to budget for. You're not considering new construction revenues. Okay, you're not considering that and discounting your demolitions. You've under budgeted. You've under budgeted for years. You have, and that's the reality. If you look at the trends, if you look at your tax cap, you cut, you went up a little, you cut, you make 2 steps forward, 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And then certainly, again, to your first point, what are the consequences? We can share that with you. That's not a problem. And so, my goal today was to just talk about the reality, talk about the story, talk about people, talk about what this means, and not focus strictly on an arbitrary number that's established on a CPI. And that's kind of where we're at. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe request something with the support of the board. If this, I could go back through my tenure here and see what we've cut, but can we get a list of true reductions, not what we've actually reduced? I'm not sure how far to go back. Since 2018, all of our reductions, reduction of teachers, reductions of staff, reduction of programs, what we've actually reduced over the years, because even in our years when we were having COVID money, we still had reductions. I think it gives a good snapshot of what I don't think we've come in with years that we've added 3 programs or 3 new staff and then haven't reduced. We've always reduced, from my understanding. So I think that's a good picture. Does that make sense as a request? Okay. All right, anyone, Carrie? Good. Our enrollment is stable. Thank you, Bill. Our enrollment is stable. We did see a decrease, but it is has stabilized. I think in our focus we have a meeting on Monday, full meeting, as you know, Budget Chair Marsh said that are kind of coming in with an idea. Yep, Susan.
Oh, wait, actually, no, wait, maybe I just found it. Never mind, I found the enrollment data.
Okay.
So, what is our? Just kidding. So can we? I mean, do we have to reach a consensus of some point that we're going to present?
No.
On Monday? Well, because we want a little bit of we don't want. Okay, Barbara Wentworth, I'm gonna start speaking for myself instead of the whole board. I am not comfortable with this entire list being presented to City Council at all. I am comfortable with seeing if there is an appetite for them, even if we do say meet them not halfway, but if we're like, hey, listen, we'll make tier 1 reductions. So we're going to reduce it, but we need 1 million to be overlooked of the 1.9 million that we pay in principal.
My suggestion is it's just to make it clearer is more of, so we're at 2.6%. I would like to add a 2% to the 4.1%, right? So a simple CPI adjustment, because we're lower than that, right? If there's things on these reduction lists, like the tier 1, if there's specific things that you want to have voice now, I mean, we've asked our superintendent and VA to go back and rework a couple of things. So for a figure and have a tier 1, we have to say it all. If there's another reduction that we want to email or talk about now, we can do that. But we're meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
As a bigger picture. We still have to go forward with this, but with these 3 things: with the exemption for the charter, to be able to use the debt, to be able to remove the debt service percentage, the 1.8 that the superintendent talked about. Number 2, we have to at least be in line with the cost of living with the CPI. We're not at that percentage yet, right? That's my request. And number 3, we have to get to that number under the tax cap regardless. So if we wanted to, if you're like, we're going to close a building, we're not there yet, but we have to find, I think the work's been done in good faith for the reductions. So we can't really make something new. It's a tight schedule too for Monday, and then it's a tight schedule for the 13th. But we're going to be all focused on the budget and reworking this until the 13th.
I absolutely hear that. My one question is, the assistant superintendent is not a position that exists right now.
It's budgeted right now, but
Right.
what this proposal brings forward is a full-time special ed director and keeping the 2 building level coordinators, right?
Yes.
That's what this does. And so, and I will tell you, the assistant superintendent came out, I offered that up because I felt $180,000 in salaries and benefits could save 2 teaching positions.
Correct.
That's the way, that's
Yep.
my thought.
So
Okay, folks?
my
That's my thought.
further thought about that is just that the late bus and the grounds position don't even meet that if we move the assistant position. Do you know what I mean? Like if we flip those, because listen, late bus and grounds maintenance position, we did this exactly last year. We did it like twice. So that's my only my request would be to flip-flop those. Now you all have done so much work behind the scenes, so I could be totally off. But I say get rid of tier 2 and tier 3 and make that switch. That's my final.
I didn't follow that.
We have to have tier, so where would you, we need 400, we need $1 million. So think about that while Todd goes.
No, and I appreciate that way of looking at it, whatever Wentworth. I think going into Monday, I think from my perspective, it's for the council members to know that, this is not a locked-in budget, right? And I think it's important for them to know that, and I think they do, but it's important for them to know that so that if changes are made, they don't feel slighted, or we went into it thinking this and, you changed it up, we have a right to. But we're going into it with the administrative recommended budget, or excuse me, the recommended and proposed budget that they'll know on Monday. And I think it's about gauging. They won't be making any decisions on Monday. It's about gauging, sensing, communicating, all those sort of things to help improve that working relationship with them, including, again, information sharing. So that's how I view Monday, knowing we'll have additional meetings, recognizing that there's a time limit to make the changes.
Yeah, Carrie, then Susan, then Sarah.
Yeah, I just want to say, like Susan said it perfectly before, that we're going to ask City Council, like a big ask, because like this is nauseating to think about cutting any of these things for. I think we're all in consent. This is nauseating for us to think about cutting these very important pieces to our students, and this is just status quo things. This is not huge ask things, and I think, anything other than asking them what we talked about is the only way forward, other than, like we said, like closing our building, which is ridiculous, right? It's not going to happen, but we can't disserve our students. We can't not offer them.
So
It's
one of
crazy.
the-
So I think we're all in the same mindset. We're going to ask.
So here's one of my thoughts. My thought is, you've got this range, okay, 2.2% up to 9.4%. What we need as direction, I think, is rather than focus on these individual programs, these people, these positions, yada, 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 come up with a healthy, reasonable percentage of increase to the current budget. And then let us work that out as an administrative team. We bring it forward, rather than having you agonize over what gets moved here, there, and everywhere.
hold on.
We agonize over that, and we give you our best shot in terms of
Got it.
what we need.
Got it. Susan, then Sarah, and then Barbara.
So here's my question. If we were, and I'm a dreamer, so I just like to, think out loud here. If if we were to get the city council, give us 2/3, if we were to get the recommended budget, let's just say that. Let's say we got our wish list here. Right? I don't even want to call it's not a wish list, right? It's a needs list. But thank you. All right.
Strike it from the record.
I know. I knew as soon as I said that, I was like, that's not what I meant. I just, I was thinking the magic wand, because I feel like that's what we would need in order to get that, what we would like for this recommended budget. So what would be the potential implications for next year, right? So are a lot of these fixed? And when I say fixed, I just mean like would we be setting ourselves up for, okay, well, now we're over budget again? Like each year, like we're just kind of setting ourselves, and I know that there's things that we don't know, right? Because insurance rates go up and down, the economy and all that. But like in general, are a lot of these a lot of these costs, would they be something like, well, do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah,
Like,
so your teacher's contract's always going to be an increase because
Right.
you've already negotiated that.
Right.
Custodians will be negotiating again, so that will be SACA, again, their year 2 will be budgeted for, that'll be an increase.
Right.
Retirement rates, as I said, the following budget
Right.
cycle are going to hopefully go down, but typically they go up. Your health
Okay.
rates go up every year. These are all costs that are going to increase every year.
So basically, I guess, so here's maybe what I'm getting at. So if we got this, if we were able to do this, get this recommended budget, we're not necessarily, like, we're going to still need it the following year. We're not necessarily solving the problem, right? We're still going to have,
Right. Or you could have a combined approach, okay? You could have a combined approach where they say, okay, we'll override X amount, we'll waive X amount in the budget, so it's more of a combined approach. I mean, I think I'm floating the idea by you today. Katie and I really need to sit down and say, okay, because I don't know if the council has an appetite for that. So then we need to sit down and figure out, okay, what's that amount mean? I think Todd's right. You have that, you just have a dialogue. This shouldn't be a meeting where people are putting pressure on the council, don't let this happen. They're reasonable people. They're going to hear what you have to say, and they're going to think it through. They have constituents. They get it. They know they have to balance the tax rate with the needs of kids. I think they're going to get it.
And they haven't even seen the city budget yet, because that won't happen until March. 'Cause
And to them, it's not going to be rocket science. It's pretty much black and white. Here's where we're at, folks, and it's just common sense. I think common sense will prevail.
So if I can just point us back to page 1 again, we haven't really gone beyond that. On the net budget, with the increase, the estimated tax impact, we're going forward with this is what the majority of the discussion with city council will be. It's $1.86. Half of that is about 93 cents. That, just to level set this board, right? Because that's what the conversation is going to be on, up to $1. We are at 90 cents last year. 93 cents is half of this, half of this increase, which is a little over $1 million, $1,550,221. So just to have that in our mind, have that set, and I believe Sarah, or Carrie, you're next. Okay, Sarah. Yep.
I think, okay, so as I'm working it out, so we all hate this. Building administrators work really hard and hate this too. So everybody hates this. So town hates, just blah, blah, gross. Okay, so we can all acknowledge that we all hate this. But we cannot pick and choose items from this. This whole goes, right?
Unless we were to get more funding.
Okay, cool. Unless we get more funding. And tiers are not swappable. The tiers are labeled tier 1 is the least impact, tier 2 is
They're still
more
swappable
impact.
at this point. They are.
But as far as this is not arranged as far as a menu, this is arranged as this is one, this is the least impact,
Yes,
this
correct.
is more impact, and this
And
is
this
the
is
most significant
correct.
impact. And so it's not okay, cool. Just making sure I got the
Yep.
got that. Cool. Thanks.
You got it?
Yep.
Good. That was a good way to present.
I love the menu reference, Sarah. That helped me a lot. So here is my question. Love you guys. Okay. If we cut the full 1.3 million, that is all the tiers, what percentage is that? Because you were talking about,
you're
give us
going-
a percentage.
You're essentially
So-
going to a 2.2% increased budget.
Okay, but if we cut the 1.3, it will be 2.2.
Your overall budget increase should be roughly 2.2 when you consider
Okay.
revenue and expenditures.
Okay, next question. If we cut $500,000, what percentage would we be at?
Well, isn't every $100,000, how much is that?
I don't know. If you're talking tax rate, that's
Yeah,
different
yeah,
than what
it's
she,
different,
percentage.
right.
I don't know what she's
rate,
talking.
Well, you asked us to pick a percentage between 2.2 and 9 point. So I'm trying to get a more
2.2%
clear.
is 864,000. It's whatever the tax. Well, minus the revenue. It's $447,000 for a 2.2% increase.
So 2.2% increase would be if we cut this full 1.3.
If you don't take the recommended budget,
I'm
you
not
cut
doing it.
everything, and you go with the tax cap budget, your net budget increase is gonna be $447,000 and some change, right, Katie? That's what's in the book.
Well, your net budget is increasing by the 836.
Yeah, but when you discount revenue, the true increase,
For expenditures only,
For
yes, but
expenditures,
that's not
correct.
how it's factored, but
money
yes.
we can actually spend is $447,000. It's not 836,000.
I'm so confused.
can you-
And this is, I want to be able to give you a walk away recommend, be like, oh yeah, 6%
As,
or
as
whatever.
chair, my recommendation is 4.2%.
And you're talking just expenditures only, though, so
Right.
it's actually going to go up more than that because we do have to factor revenue in. So
Right.
the expenditures only, you want to increase by 4.1, which is about 1.27
But we have to
on
be-
expenses only. But then when we add in the loss of revenue, it's going to be higher than that, net budget-wise.
So potentially, let's think about this, the tax cap number,
So the 836, the tax cap number, is 4.1% increase on the net budget.
Right,
It is, when you factor in both sides. If you want to do a 4.1 on just expenses alone, not considering revenue, it's going to be like a $1.2 million increase on the expenses.
right, so that would be an $800,000, we're trying to cut $800,000, yeah.
Right.
Anyone else?
What can I recommend to say,
What?
Yeah.
will that save tier?
Yeah, I mean, we have a combined approach, right? There's an exemption to the charter, we can do some of that. There's a,
So
yep, and I think we'll have to go through it, because listen, this is a difficult thing, because it's so, the formula does not take into account the needs. The formula does not, it's a very different thing here, but I think what we're gonna be speaking about, just to keep our perspective there, is the tax impact for Somersworth citizen. Bigger picture, we're not sustaining our schools. So there's a bigger impact on our community. So I think that a 90 cent, 92 cent, 90, up to a 93 cent impact, that's my appetite.
And
Additional impact, not just a 93-cent impact. You want the full $1.86 impact, basically.
No,
No, that's.
no, not that, half of that,
Oh my gosh.
So you only want a 90-cent increase?
92.
So that's not the full 2 million then?
No,
Right.
But you have the, okay.
we do.
Another way of looking at it is.
So if
what-
you go up to the 4.1% that you just mentioned, though, that's the 1.2, and then you add in the revenue loss, you're already at $1.45.
Right,
So-
and Katie, what does that do to the real money that we have to spend? Because you're losing revenue. You don't have that to spend anymore, right? You don't have that revenue anymore to spend.
No, I know, I'm just trying to understand the percentage and what you want to come in at so that I can come to a dollar amount, is all I'm saying, yeah.
Traditionally,
2.2% is $447,000.
traditionally, the city council has not had an appetite for anything over $1.
And,
Traditionally,
right, yep.
traditionally.
And you can keep that tradition, and you're going to have, you're going to have you're going to have similar conversations for the years to come.
This is
That's a tradition, then that's the tradition.
right, but Lou, my point, and I feel like we're still going to have, even if we meet this, the recommended budget, we're still going to be, next year, we're going to come back and say, well, this is the bar we've set now, and we need to maintain it. So either we meet it again, or we have this same conversation next year. So what can we do? And this is where I don't know what do we do to not have to revisit the same conversation each time? And this is where I guess I just don't understand enough about I understand how we got here. What I don't understand is how do we undo it so that we're to a point where we're having conversations where we're saying, okay, this is great, we have money to play with, and now we can actually do more with
Give
our
us some time to figure that out. We're not prepared to answer that question right now.
And
We
the
need more
ade-
state funding. That's the answer
state
to that.
funding and adequacy. So, yeah, state funding.
More state funding.
So when we potentially, very much the potential of getting adequacy aid at the 24th hour, right? We need to see where our tiers are. What we will have a list like our CPI. We will have what we can put right back into the budget.
Right, so tier one, all the supply increases that we have to cut out, we will give those back to the admin if we get more supplement, like we just did this year, we gave them more money. Those are the items we can do. You know, the positions are tough because we've already laid off the staff, and if we don't have the money in the future years, we have to lay off again. But capital items, if there's, you know, items that we need to do, that we can do in the supplemental. It's not a great process, it's not what we like, but
It's
that's the opportunity.
It's protective for our functioning of a school. So if we put in all of our supplies and other things that we can get within, you know, quicker,
Yep.
we can't get people back. We can't get. It just doesn't work like that. Does that make sense? So if we say, all right, we're going to cut as many things and then have a list to be able to put back in, because we may get that adequacy aid. We may get $1 million in adequacy at the, yeah.
Okay, so what can we do?
I think you look at other cities around you and how do they do it?
Well, that's
They
one
override the
thing.
tax cap every year.
Yeah.
That's how they do it. That's the reality, folks. That's the reality.
Well, no, but
No other magic bullet.
no,
other than
but
that.
this is my thing. Like, how do we get out of a position where we're not just sort of waiting for that magic wizard wand of the adequacy aid from the state?
It's never going to happen, I don't think. You're not. It's going to be the same conversation year in and year out in Summersworth. You're never going to get ahead. That's the reality. I mean, I hate to say that, but
Our
that's the
needs are
reality.
growing. Our needs are growing for our students. Are, you know, as we've seen, you know, we're close. We're razor's edge on our budget this year because, you know, we have special education needs that are significant. So how do we get through that? That's funded more. That needs to, if the real needs for students, which is unbelievable to me that they're not funded more, and insurance costs, we can work within our budget if that's supported more at a state and federal level. And if our little city can hear that, or if we can say that, because this is bone chilling for what we're required to do as a board.
So folks, Primex property and liability increase 7%, 2.2% on your tax cap budget. Primex workers' compensation 10%, 2.2 on your budget. Northeast dental rates 7%, 2.2 on your budget. Health Trust dental rates 4.7%, 2.2 on your budget. Salary increases includes teachers 4.5%, 2.2 on your budget. Custodians 3.5%, 2.2 on your budget. You cannot sustain those types of fixed costs and provide for your kids. So it's going to come out of things like supplies, field trips, the things that we have minimal impact on the budget. It's really about, again, people laying off people to sustain the increases. It's almost like cannibalizing. You've got people, and then in order to keep people, you've got to lay off people. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's the reality under the system that you have. And so I know I'm getting worked up, and I shouldn't. I had too much coffee.
But this is okay. People are watching this, so to understand it, I think they're understanding it better.
So just to take a deep breath, and I think right now there's a lot of angst. We experienced this angst the last 2 or 3 weeks, right? As a group of professionals sitting in the room, you're going through the same angst that we went through. I think what you look at right now is don't make a decision today. Just have a general conversation with the council. See what they have to say. They're reasonable people. They'll hear what you have to say. I don't think they're going to be in there with their backs turned to you. They're going to want to hear it. They're going to want to hear the story. And then give us some time to come back after we process that. Maybe you need another workshop. And then we get into the nitty-gritties of, okay, what's the real percentage? It gives Katie and me some time to go back and look, and other people to go back and look and say, okay, if the scenario is 2.2%, we know what X amount is. If it's 4.1%, we know what X amount is. Is it 5.5? Can we live with that? Perhaps. Then we could move forward in that regard. I also need to find out what other school districts, and I'll talk to some other superintendents, what's going on around us in terms of percentage of increases. because that tells you what the market conditions are. All right, we compete with Dover, we compete with Rochester, we compete with Berwick. And they might have a different funding system, but pay is pay is pay. And so I give me some time to look at that, and then those are the true market conditions, other than just an arbitrary CPI. You know.
The joint discussion that we have with the city council on Monday has become a recent norm here in Somersworth, but I think it's noteworthy to point out that it's not the norm in most places. To have that pre-discussion, information sharing, gauging session with the other government body in the city or a town. It's unusual, and I think it's a show that it's an example of the relationship that we have with each other. We're not going to see things in the exact same way, and I've said this before. Having served on both bodies, I rarely hear from people when I'm on the school board talking to me about their tax rate. Rarely. It can happen, but rarely. I did when I was on the city council, so we often hear from different people. But I agree. I think they're reasonable people on the city council. They were elected by oftentimes the same people that elected us, right? And I think they want us to find they want us to talk, they want us to gauge, they want us to find a common ground, albeit imperfect. So I think meeting with them on Monday Monday is a positive thing. And let's just have that discussion. And I suspect that there were counselors who wanted, from what I'm hearing, city councilors who wanted this televised, right? Because they want to know, they wanted to listen in, and including for our discussion on Monday.
And just to piggyback what you just said, the administrators I've interacted with in the city are reasonable people. They're good people, through the Department of Public Works, to the police, to fire, to your city manager. Very good people, and care about what they do. And I think they care about kids. And so I think they're reasonable, and I would think if they're working for a board, they'd want to work with reasonable board members, which I think they're reasonable council members. That's like, if you weren't reasonable, I probably wouldn't be here, because I want to be with reasonable people, and that's kind of the way I look at it. And it's the same holds true for the city side, right? So anyway.
Okay. All right. I think that unless we can take time to look through the binder, any other real clarifying questions, the long haul of it, but this isn't the end of it. I would keep our calendars open in the next week in case we need to meet somehow here or Black Box or somewhere, for one more, because on the 13th, just a reminder, that will be the presentation will have to be finalized.
Right, but remember, the presentation is going to be a tax-compliant budget. So your decisions on cuts and stuff really don't have to happen. I mean, kind of, but not really. You still have time after that, as long as you're not drastically changing it from what's presented here as possible cuts. If you're going to add a different cut, then we need to know. But if we're just moving tiers and stuff, we're not going to get our final budget amount until the council starts doing their budget in March.
Right.
And then you're going to know your final amount, and then you can put money back in. So what's being presented is going to be a tax cap compliant budget, because that's what we have to present to council, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Maggie,
Barbara, then Todd, yeah.
on our meeting on Monday is, could you just tell the public what time it is and if it's open to the public?
Yes, open to the public, 5 o'clock here. In council chambers at 5 o'clock, Monday the 5th. Yes, Todd.
Just a quick comment on the public hearing. I think I agree. When we go into the public hearing, generally there aren't drastic changes after that, and because it can be looked at as, well, this is what you presented.
Right.
But I will also say this. I think the point of a public hearing also is to get public opinion. And for many, they may not be watching today, right? And so I think our community members need to know that it's not fixed. It may be if we choose not to change it, but it's not necessarily fixed at the time of the public hearing, because what's the point of the public hearing, right? As government officials sometimes, or I hate, bureaucrats, I don't consider myself that, but maybe my other job. But, there's a thought process sometimes of, almost, let's do the public hearing, which we veered from, public hearing and vote the same night because, well, we don't want any discussion. We want to be able to vote on this quickly. But we changed gears so that to really absorb the public's opinion on this. So I just wanted to share that the public hearing is for that information sharing and input from our constituents.
I think what's more important too is once we submit to council and say, these are where we're going to cut and this is where we can't lose, that we stick to that, because it's happened in the past where we've come forward with, I don't want to say sob story, but our impacts, and then it gets changed after they approve the budget, and that looks bad on us too, because you came forward to us saying you can't lose these, and then in fact you did cut them and did something else. So you can't, at that point, it should be kind of like,
Yes, Sarah.
I mean, as long as we're just to remind our constituents, we are a representative democracy, right? So, sometimes we only hear from people when they are displeased with something, but if there's something you want and something you want kept, this is why this system exists, for you to speak out for your children or to speak out for your community and speak out for your schools and your tax caps and your budgets and all of this. Our hands in this situation, I mean, you've seen the list, we've seen the list and the tiers, and we're basically, our hands are tied in many ways because of the budget constraints that we face. And we do have to present what did you say it was, a
tax cap compliant budget?
Yeah, tax cap compliant budget. So it's not like we as a school board can come up with some magical solution. The solution is going to come from the community as a whole. And we want to work with city council, but we also need to know what the public wants us to do and what you value and what you want Summersworth to be. So I would highly encourage you to contact us, contact your council. You have time. The budget isn't finalized until...
We submit it to the city manager by March 1st, and then they begin their process at the city level, and we're a part of that process.
Right. So, there are options, but you do need to use your democratic rights and contact your representatives and actually speak out for your community, because we can be a great community. We just need you to actually, you elected us and you participated in that part, so please continue to participate. Your job is not done. Thank you.
Wonderful. Scheduling the 5th here in City Council chambers, the joint meeting with the school board, full city council. Our next school board meeting is February 13th. That will be the budget presentation and hearing starting at 6 p.m. So that's a change from our normal 7 p.m. We will start our regular school board meeting at 7 p.m. The week after that, we will have to meet, since we are not voting on the school budget until the following week, the week of February 19th. Which is February 19th is President's Day. It is an in-school day for Summersworth. We had the 20th as a school board meeting, but that's a city council meeting here because they not meeting on Monday. We do need to meet. So we could, the 20th, we do, I can't really say anything yet, but we may need to be open to the 20th or 22nd. Is anyone not available on the 22nd, or can the 22nd be a potential day for a school board meeting? It would be to vote on the budget. It wouldn't be I don't think it would be a very long meeting at that point because we just had our meeting, but if we can look at...
So you're not going to vote on the 20th? That was the original plan? No?
Well, city council's here, and I may need to be here for the city council meeting.
Oh.
Early? 7. I think there's another meeting in City Hall. I think there's another meeting that day in the chambers. Yeah, in here.
So you're saying moving our meeting from the 20th?
Moving it from the 20th to the 22nd.
Any reason why we would move that? Do we need to vote before they vote, or should we wait until
They
our
won't even
vote?
have our budget yet on the 20th.
Okay. Thank you for that.
When are you suggesting?
You've got, the 13th, you have a board meeting. right?
13.
No, I'm saying that day, on the 20th, before the city council meeting.
No, because she's trying to schedule our board meeting from the
Right.
20th, moving our board meeting, whole board meeting, not just meeting on the budget.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, whole board meeting, full board meeting, yeah. Full board meeting to, yep, full board meeting. Okay, 22nd. It looks like it's okay, just in general. Any closing comments by visitors? I mean, at this point, we can, anyone can come up and speak. Zoom in. Okay. Anyone to speak?
I would just say if you have questions as you go through, please feel free to reach out.
Great. Yep. All right, any closing comments by board members? No, anything?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Susan.
And I'd like to recognize Crystal for taking the time and the snacks
Yeah,
today.
thank
you
you.
so much for that.
Thank you.
She was here early, we were carrying him in.
Oh, he said.
I would like to thank Crystal for bringing food today and coffee. We appreciate that and the time you put into that. I know you were here early when I was opening the doors. You were waiting, and Katie, you and I brought stuff in, and so thank you for that.
Yep. Thank you to this board for a good discussion and workshop. I will see you all on Monday. Do I have at 5 o'clock here in council chambers? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.